Never waste a good crisis. And when it comes to the economic crisis, don't waste it when it can have a very positive impact.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste.
The way we're going to win over the long term is not just militarily. We've got to win over hearts and minds. And what that means is we've got to invest in countries that have no educational infrastructure, have no means for young people to get ahead. We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see.
Stay tuned for politics and religion.
Well, you're not going to believe this, but England is becoming more free than the United States of America. With the election of its more conservative government, Labor has finally given up on the idea of ID cards. Now, right while some of our Congress is pushing the idea afresh, even though it's been beaten back several times, yet you've got Lindsey Graham and Mr. Schumer who are pushing the idea of a national ID card openly in our Congress. Now then, Great Britain has come out and said, no, we're not going to do that because we stand for freedom. Let me promise you, the people pushing a national ID do not stand for freedom. They stand for control. And do I need to remind us that freedom and control are opposite terms? Here's the story coming out of Great Britain today. Labor has decided to back down in its fight to introduce ID cards after years of campaigning for their introduction. The surprise move came this afternoon during the second reading of the Identity Documents Bill, which would repeal both ID cards and the National ID Register. We accept the conservatives and liberal Democrats have mandate to abandon this measure, Shadow Home Secretary Alan Johnson conceded. Because the Labor Party lost the last elections, they are now saying we concede that that's one of the big issues they won on, and therefore they have a right to suspend the efforts toward a national ID card. Once the bill receives royal assent, apparently that means in the House of Lords, ID cards will no longer function as proof of identity within 1 month. In 2 months, the National Identity Register will cease to exist entirely, Ms. May said. It is un-British. We are a freedom-loving people. It's a discomfort born of a very British revulsion of over-intrusive government. I pay tribute to all those who campaigned so hard against the introduction of ID cards. Congratulations, Great Britain. God help the United States of America to follow in your footsteps on this one, because there's a story breaking here in the U.S. Just this month, Delaware to launch federal ID initiative. Delawareans who want to board a commercial airplane or train in the future will first have to obtain a federally compliant driver's license or state identification card that meets new post-911 security standards. The new requirements take effect December 1, 2014 for residents born after 1964. Those born before then have until December 1, 2017 to comply with the mandate, according to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So what has happened is 24 out of 50 states here in the United States of America have either passed laws against implementation of Real ID or resolutions against it. But let me tell you, there are a group of people in our government that fully intend to control where you go, what you do, and they want to track you 24/7. So they are desperate not to lose this power. The battle has just been lost in Great Britain, at least temporarily. And they are acknowledging that they have lost it, and so they're throwing their national ID initiative on the scrap heap of history. I say to the U.S. Congress, I say to the U.S. Senate, listen up and see what they've done in Great Britain. We need to follow in their footsteps because Delaware is pushing like never before to implement the Real ID Act. However, the Real ID Act is opposed on so many levels that most people say it's dead in the water. However, if you live in Delaware, it's obviously not dead in the water. Now, let's make sure everyone out there understands. If they can give you a number and put you in their database, then the next step will be telling you you have to have that identity card to hold a job here in the United States of America. If you don't have a card or are not in their database, you can't hold a job. Now, here's the big question. The Bible talks about a time when a person on this earth will be required to have a mark or a number without which they will be unable to buy or sell. Can you buy or sell with no job? I don't think so. That's the reason we don't need a national ID. The United Nations Security Council approved a fourth round of sanctions against Iran today because of its continued pursuit of nuclear capability. The UN believes that Iran now has enough fissile material stockpiled to produce 2 nuclear weapons. We'll discuss the prophetic implications of this latest move on today's edition of Politics and Religion.
Look, there are 2 things I don't discuss: politics and religion.
In my house, we don't talk about politics and we don't talk about religion.
I'll talk to you about anything except politics and religion.
I never talk about politics and religion.
Politics determines how we'll live here on earth. Religion determines how we'll live forever. I'm Irvin Baxter. I think it's time we talk about it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, they have been pushing for many months for what just happened today. The UN Security Council approved a fourth round of sanctions against the nation of Iran. Now, the question is, what does it mean, if anything? The consensus of opinion is that it really doesn't mean much, although it's being applauded by the U.S. government. At the same time, in order to get this passed, they had to compromise so much that it basically pulled the teeth out of this new level of sanctions. Most people don't believe it will make any difference whatsoever. The one thing it is doing, however, is exasperating and rubbing raw the feelings of